We are back with a random JJK video regarding Suguru Geto, watching a man change, a Jujutsu Kaisen analysis. Can we get a hi YouTube among us, please, in the chat? This is got from Cool Nugget. It's got millions of views. I am super intrigued by this because, if you watched my Jujutsu Kaisen reactions, you would know that I did really like Geto, but I didn't like how they dealt with the change. I feel like it was rushed and they should have done it differently. But I can admit when I'm wrong. So we're going to watch this video. Maybe this is going to like explain it more or so on and so forth. And maybe I'll be like, you know what? The change wasn't too bad. Maybe it's one of those things that's better on a rewatch. It wasn't done badly by no means. It was just, it wasn't done amazingly is what I guess was alluding to in my reactions. Maybe I went a little bit overboard, and maybe Jujutsu Kaisen isn't as bad as I say. Like and subscribe. We are recording this live on twitch.tv/OmarioRpg, so come and hang out. And let's see what this video is all about.
Is one of my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen characters. Despite
all right, thanks for watching.
Suguru Geto is one of my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen characters, despite the fact that he doesn't live that long. Geto is only seen in the hidden inventory arc.
Who is my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen character? Did I do a Jujutsu Kaisen tier list? Like, it's obviously, like, most people are going to be like, oh, Omar, your favorite character's Todo. Yes, I love those kind of characters. But if we look into it, if I, like, use every cell in my brain to think about, like, who is the strongest character and my favorite character in Jujutsu Kaisen, it's Panda.
And Jujutsu Kaisen 0. However, I believe that Geto is one of the best written characters Gege has ever done. And despite thoroughly...
What? What did he just say?
Doesn't live that long. Geto is only seen...
Geto? Is that how you say his name? Geto?
In the hidden inventory arc and Jujutsu Kaisen 0. However, I believe that Geto is one of the best written characters Gege has ever...
Who's Gege? You know what? I'm going to be mature about this and just click play.
Done. And despite thoroughly disagreeing with him, his motivations and reasoning are still understandable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I think to analyze Geto, we should start chronologically.
Oh, I thought his name was
The earliest point
Gigi.
we see Geto chronologically is in Hidden Inventory Episode 1. It actually opens on a scene of Geto attempting to come to terms with what happened that day. We see flash forwards to events that will happen in the coming episodes, namely Geto saving Nanako and Mimiko, as well as Gojo and Geto parting ways. This is an amazing cold open to the season, and immediately tells the audience what this season will be, an explanation as to what happened to Geto. The first episode shows Geto talking with Shoko and Gojo. It's clear that they're very close, once again bringing up the question of what happened to Geto. This question is pushed on the viewers even further when we see Gojo, Geto, and Shoko discussing the necessity of sorcerers. Interestingly, Gojo and Geto's ideas are flipped here. Gojo questions why people as strong as them are protecting weak, regular humans. Geto counters by saying that it is the duty of all sorcerers to protect the weak. This ideology is one that is repeatedly questioned throughout the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen, but especially in Hidden Inventory. Should people this strong risk their lives to protect the weak? Sorcerers die all the time due to protecting other humans. If they simply protected each other, everything would be a lot easier. However, is killing weaker humans okay? This moral question is introduced to the viewer here, and it's done exquisitely. The characters and viewer can come up with their own answers for now, but the show will take this to the absolute extreme later on. In this scene, Masamichi also assigns the two to escort Riko, and interestingly,
bro, slow down, man. Slow down. He's spitting, but slow the hell down. How do I do the slow down thing? I actually have to. Bro.
He calls the two of them the strongest, something Gojo is repeatedly called by people in the present.
Like this.
As we'll see later.
Never mind. We'll just let him spit his facts. I'll try and take it all in.
The question of what being the strongest means is something else that also comes up multiple times throughout the show. Geto once again reprimands Gojo for his braggadocious behavior, to which Gojo once again brushes it off. From the ensuing fight, we see that both Geto and Gojo are practically invincible in the current Jujutsu world. Although one thing I find very interesting is that in this battle, Geto is clearly putting in a lot of effort to win. Meanwhile, Gojo has to just stand there and he is by default untouchable. Another major player in the hidden inventory arc,
Great
and
character.
therefore Geto's past, is also introduced around this point. Fushiguro Toji is immediately interesting to the audience due to not only being related to Megumi, but also because he's attempting to kill Riko. The day commences and there are some really nice scenes of Gojo, Geto, Riko, and her caretaker. It's clear that they all get along and plan to give Riko the best final days before she is erased for Tengen. Geto is very sympathetic to Riko and her cause. It's clear that he cares not only about her, but any person not trying to harm others. Although, as I just said, we see that he has no sympathy for curse users who use their powers to hurt others, with him beating up an old sorcerer attempting to get to Riko. After rescuing Kuroi, the four of them spend the day on the beach. This scene, as well as the intro of the show, is kind of heartbreaking, especially if you know what happens to these four. Geto and Gojo especially clearly had a very special relationship that would be destroyed by extenuating circumstances. The knife is twisted even more when Geto expresses concern for Gojo, to which he responds by saying that his best friend is always there to watch his back. As they return to the high school, Gojo lets his infinity go, telling Geto that the whole experience has been extremely tiring. Everything was perfect at this point. Gojo and Geto protected the non-sorcerers, they gave Riko a final fun day, they got rid of some bad sorcerers, and nobody was hurt. And maybe, if that happened, the Jujutsu world could have been safe from Kenjaku. Gojo and Geto could still be the strongest together, and Riko Amanai could have lived. But that would have been too easy. The stabbing of Gojo Satoru sends everyone into a panic. Geto immediately questions how Toji even got into the school's domain. In a panic, Gojo and Geto double-team Toji to get him down for a bit, before Geto asks about Gojo's condition. Gojo tells Geto to get Riko to Tengen and that he'll be fine. The ensuing fight isn't really relevant to an analysis of Geto, however it is important that Gojo loses, almost dying in the process. Geto takes Riko and Kuroi to the Tombs of the Star. Kuroi waits behind after saying goodbye to Riko. Geto begins escorting Riko to Tengen before realizing that this may not be what she wants. After all, she is doing exactly what he is doing, sacrificing herself for the purpose of helping other people, especially non-sorcerers. And at this point, Geto doesn't question the purpose of that. However, he still believes that it should be a choice. Kindly, Geto gives Riko the option to return to Kuroi and live her life separate from the sorcery world. To Geto, Riko is innocent, and she should be given the choice to sacrifice herself for the weak or to continue living her own life. And while at this point it's still for noble intentions, I believe this is the first time we see Geto question whether the way the sorcery world works is correct or not. Riko admits that she saw her life as a necessary sacrifice. However, after hearing that Geto and Gojo would be willing to fight Tengen for her, she decides that her life is worth living. Geto reaches out his hand to Riko. As she reaches...
Damn!
After the shooting of Riko, Geto would be thrown into a battle with the man who killed the unkillable, the man who brought down Satoru Gojo, the sorcerer killer, Fushiguro Toji.
Yo.
The ensuing battle is really the first and potentially only time we see an extended fight where Geto is going all out. And he truly is strong. He has a lot of technical skill, however he simply cannot match Gojo. Gojo is stronger from birth. The Six Eyes and Limitless technique make him practically invincible to anyone. Geto simply cannot keep up, and therefore he loses to Toji. Toji keeps Geto alive, fearing for what will happen to the curses he has consumed. During this moment, Toji also says something that would impact Geto forever, saying that despite their strength and their gifts that...
Is this the Hunter x Hunter reference? Also, we've all got a friend who looks like this. Let's go.
Birth, Geto and Gojo couldn't overcome a monkey like himself. Soon after this loss, Gojo tips the scales by killing Toji after awakening to his true power as the heir of the clan's techniques. Immediately after this, Gojo goes to recover Riko's body from the Time Vessel Association, where Geto meets up with him. The room is full of people, non-sorcerers, applauding the death of Riko. Geto is clearly shocked by this, however he remains firm in his beliefs. After Gojo asks him to kill everyone in the room, Geto responds that there would be no point. Gojo then retorts by asking if a point is necessary. He then leaves Geto in a room full of ignorant non-sorcerers, people who don't understand all the sacrifice and tribulation that he and all sorcerers go through to keep them safe. Instead of thanking them, or even simply not acknowledging them, they stand there applauding the death of an innocent teenage girl. This is the point where Geto begins to change. He starts to to view the world differently, especially after seeing the cruelty of non-sorcerers towards those who are essentially their saviors. We see this in the next episode, flashing forward 1 year, showing the effect Riko's death had on the strongest duo. We see Geto and Shoko helping Gojo train his techniques, with him constantly having Infinity on, mastering reverse curse technique, and he's even beginning to use domain expansion. Geto, on the other hand, is clearly stunted in his growth as a sorcerer. He looks awful. Gojo even asks if he's lost weight, which Geto denies. We go back to the line we heard at the beginning of the series. Since Gojo is the strongest, he's on missions by himself, Shoko is a healer and therefore is on separate missions, and so all Geto does is find weak curses, exorcise them, and consume them. Consuming curses is something only Geto can do, and so only he knows the taste of it, and his description isn't too flattering to say the least. Geto has been fully isolated from his friends after experiencing something traumatic. His PTSD and depression are clear, even with just these few scenes. He constantly tries to tell himself that he did nothing wrong, but while
okay, that was a bad. Never pause an anime. Remember the rules. Just remember the rules. God, again, I just wish we got a whole season of this. I really do. How many chapters was this whole Geto downfall in the manga? I'd love to know.
The memories of what he witnessed at the Time Vessel Association, he cracks.
Damn monkeys.
Geto is finally beginning to question what he's doing. If everything he's done, all the sacrifices he's making, all the curses he consumes, if it's all to support these cruel non-sorcerers, then why is he doing it? Why is he helping these monkeys, as he sees it? For now, I believe that when Geto says monkeys, he's referring to only the evil non-sorcerers, like the children of the Time Vessel and Toji. However, soon after, this definition would change. Geto begins talking to Haibara about what it means to be a sorcerer, something Haibara had never really thought about before. The difference between these two is that Haibara looks no further than the surface. People are in need, I help them. The reason for this could be as he says, which is that he just doesn't think about it too deeply, but the other reason could be that Haibara hasn't seen the cruelty of the world. His mindset is the exact same as Geto's pre-Riko, and it's clear that he wants to go back to it. After the conversation with Haibara finishes, Geto talks to another special grade sorcerer, Yuko. Yuko says that she believes that the Jujutsu world doesn't actually do anything about cursed spirits.
And I agree.
I agree. They simply fight them when they do. There are two ways to prevent curses from appearing.
He looks like what's her name out of
says, which is to either stop cursed energy entirely or to make everybody able to control it. The issue is that for both these solutions, people who can't use Jujutsu must cease to exist. Geto asks Yuko about this, to which she simply asks if he hates non-sorcerers. As I stated before, Geto does not yet hate everyone who is weak, he simply hates the bad ones. Yuko tells Geto that only he can shape his life before leaving. As she leaves, she also tells Geto something I find super interesting, which is that they found another vessel for Tengen. Even though this was bound to happen, I think it really affected Geto to know that Riko's death was entirely pointless. Speaking of death, Geto meets with Nanami after a mission which got Haibara killed. This clearly rattles Geto, with him once again wondering if this is all worth it. Geto's final straw is seeing Mimiko and Nanako trapped in a cage by non-sorcerers for nothing. They are simply scared of their abilities. After a year of being alienated from his friends, dealing with PTSD, watching non-sorcerers continue to live in ignorance about all the sacrifice the people around him put in, and finally, seeing two innocent young sorcerers be caged by these people for nothing, Geto snaps. He proceeds to kill over 100 non-sorcerers, including his parents. This leads to him being sentenced to death by the High Order of the Jujutsu world. Upon hearing the news, Gojo approaches Geto on the street, asking him what he thinks he's doing. Geto tells him exactly how it is. He isn't kidding. He genuinely believes that this is the way the world should be. Gojo points out the obvious flaw, which is that Geto can't simply kill billions of people. This clearly annoys Geto, the reasoning being that Gojo could kill billions if he so desired. While Geto spent the last year in a state of depression, Gojo spent it furthering the gap in their strengths. Geto was already going to always be second to Gojo, but the past year made that blatantly obvious. They were no longer the strongest together. Gojo alone was. This also brings up the question of killing with purpose, something that means a lot to Geto. The reason he hated being a sorcerer was because there was no purpose to it for him. He was risking his life and watching his friends die for the very people he was saving to remain ignorant, or worse, violent towards sorcerers. Killing non-sorcerers in Geto's mind has a purpose.
I'm not gonna lie.
He's healing the world of an inferior species. Geto then asked the famous question,
Are you the strongest
because you're Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest? I believe this question refers to the internal conflict that Gojo felt and would continue to feel. Everybody learned the name Satoru Gojo, but how many people actually knew him? Geto was friends with Gojo for himself, not because he was the strongest. However, he proposes the chicken and egg type question. The question is quite interesting and doesn't really have a definitive answer. One could claim Gojo was simply born strong, so it defined him, but another could argue that he had to hone his strength, which he did due to his personality. Regardless, the question leaves Gojo stunned. As Geto begins to turn away, Gojo appears to prepare to unleash Hollow Purple. Geto tells Gojo that he should kill him, as that would have a purpose. However, Gojo can't bring himself to kill one of the only true friends he's ever had. His one and only. From here, Geto takes over the Time Vessel Association through brute strength over those he calls monkeys. The final time we see him before JJK 0 is when he wipes blood off his face, declaring that he hates monkeys. The Hidden Inventory arc shows us 3 friends
Meanwhile,
who would
monkeys
all go
are
down
like,
wildly different paths in life. Something I find extremely interesting is the way that the killers who would all
wish
go
that
down
she was in
wildly
it more.
different paths in life.
I can't even remember her name. Yeah. No,
Something I find extremely interesting is the way that the killing of Rico flipped the ideology of our 2 main characters. Gojo saw how the weak needed protecting. He wasn't strong enough to save Rico from Toji, and so he would train himself to make sure that he would never let another innocent person die again. Geto, on the other hand, saw how the way non-sorcerers operated wasn't necessarily helping the weak, especially when those same non-sorcerers would cause more harm than curses. Geto's plan for Earth, however, would have one major flaw, which is the flaw with all forms of genocide. Besides the very obvious immorality of killing, if Geto were to kill all non-sorcerers, that would mean that he would have to do essentially exactly what Toji did to Rico. He would be killing innocent people. However, he's twisted it in his mind to say that his reasoning is more noble than Toji, but I digress. The next and final time we truly see Geto is in the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 movie. There isn't really much about Geto here, but we should still take a look. The Jujutsu Kaisen 0 movie follows Yuta Okotsu as he learns more about the curse that has been haunting him since childhood, that of his dead friend Rika, not to be confused with Rico. While the movie doesn't actually have that much in terms of development for Geto, it does contain the final time that we ever see him. Before all that, let's talk about what happens throughout the movie in relation to Geto. The first hint we get of Geto is when we see him as a shadowy figure testing Yuta's ability. When we properly see him for the first time, he's at that church he took over in Hidden Inventory. Non-sorcerers come to him to have their curse-related problems solved, seemingly for no exchange. In reality, Geto absorbs the curse himself, and in this particular scene, he calls the young woman a
filthy monkey who can't even use jujutsu.
Geto then announces to a large group that the era of true sorcery is finally beginning, with him declaring war on Jujutsu High, which is what he sees as the shining pillar of modern sorcery. Geto hates Jujutsu High because to him it represents the aspect of the sorcery world that needlessly leads young sorcerers to death for weaker people. Geto then menacingly appears on the Jujutsu High grounds and discusses what he thinks of the modern world to Yuta. During the conversation, Geto calls Maki a monkey, which is what leads Yuta to not be swayed by him. As Geto attempts to apologize, an old friend greets him. The interaction between them is short, but it's clear that Geto doesn't actually hold much animosity.
JJK 0 looks so clean, doesn't it? It like, if you looked at this, you'd think UFO Table animated it.
For Gojo. The same cannot necessarily be said the other way around. The whole plan is that Geto will create chaos in Shinjuku. Meanwhile, he will personally fight Yuta in an attempt to absorb Rika. While the main sorcerers are all busy in Shinjuku, Geto attacks Maki, Inumaki, Yuta, and Panda. All but Yuta go down as he attempts to keep Geto at bay using Rika. During this battle, we hear Geto talk more about how his ideals have evolved. They're generally the same as before, just with more hatred, saying how he hates how the weak avert their eyes to those stronger than them. Yuta points this out for what it is, a simple-minded outlook of a man trying to play God. The battle continues on, with Geto unleashing his Uzumaki attack on Yuta, a combination of over 4,000 curses. Yuta counters using Rika and actually ends up winning. As Geto limps away from his demise, Gojo catches up with him. He asks Gojo what took so long.
Classic glory hunter.
Gojo said to him when he visited the church
comes to
for
take
the
the
first
glory
time. He asks
and
if
leaves.
his family is safe, showing that he wasn't manipulating his henchmen and that he really cared for them. Gojo assures him that they're okay, before Geto calls Gojo out for sending Panda and Inumaki when he knew Geto could kill them. Gojo remarks that he knew Geto would never kill young sorcerers. Geto's final words affirm his hatred for non-sorcerers, but he also says that he never hated any student of Jujutsu High. He simply couldn't feel satisfied in the world that he lived in. No matter what, his life felt meaningless, but although short-lived, the church gave him a reason to keep going. That reason was genocide, but it still gave him a reason. Gojo then tells Geto something that we as the audience don't hear, which to my knowledge, we are never told about. What Gojo said here could be literally anything, but I'll just leave it at him telling Geto that this is it. Geto remarks that Gojo should at least kill him with a curse, and finally, Geto Suguru is killed at the hands of Gojo Satoru. The film concludes with Gojo giving Yuta back the ID Geto stole. When Yuta asks how he got it, Gojo remarks that it's from a friend, his one and only.
Aww. By the way, Gojo's gone, and Gato's Killua. Just want everyone to know that. If anyone thought it was the other way around, you're in denial. Let's carry on. Like, surely, right? I still would have preferred if Gojo went bad. I would have. Geto should have been the good guy. And I've still got 0 over Season 2 or 1. It's still the best part of Jujutsu Kaisen. Then I've got Season 1 just above Season 2. Obviously, all of them are mid, and I don't like Jujutsu Kaisen, but that's the correct order. We still have more seasons. True. Maybe I'll watch them. Oh, maybe I won't. I don't know. I'll have to check my calendar. No, I think after I'm done with AOT, I might rewatch Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer. But then after Demon Slayer, I might rewatch Jujutsu Kaisen. I just don't get why Season 2 gets so much more love than Season 1. Is it just me that prefers Season 1? Just me? It might just be me. Good video, though. I just wish it'd slow down a bit. But very good video. Shout out to Cool Nugget. Do I read the comments? Yeah, we don't care if we get spoiled. Yeah, it was about as cringe as I was expecting from Jujutsu Kaisen fans. I think it's fascinating to see how Geto is living his best life in Zero. He acts like a Disney villain, takes pictures with his family, and has so much fun fighting Yuta and doing his bad guy routine. Down to his last moments, he smiles wholeheartedly because he truly has no regrets. They don't help themselves, do they? No, that was quite a nice comment. Listen, Jujutsu Kaisen is my meme. If you can't take jokes, then you're just on the wrong channel, right? Jujutsu Kaisen is just my meme. Should I turn it into Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood being my new meme anime? I would, but them people scare me. So I'll just say with Jujutsu Kaisen. Jujutsu Kaisen fans can take a joke. On that note, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/OmarioRpg, and come and watch live. Twitch.tv/OmarioRpg.